I'm really very happy to be introducing our colloquium speaker virtually today. Samantha was a student here at Geneseo, was a Geneseo physics major, and was a research student in my lab. And she was part of a very successful research group that I worked with. We even were able to publish a paper together, which is very rare. And so that was really exciting. And I'm going to embarrass her by telling my story about the fact that the reason we were able to publish that paper was because Samantha kept the best logbooks of any person I've ever worked with in my entire career. She had the best logbooks. Yes, I have since been looking for a student who could even get close to the quality of the logbooks that Samantha maintained, as well as the fantastic decision making that she made in the lab as we were working in one of the versions of the thin films lab, as we called it at the time. And so that was really important. That group of students, which included Ben Apker and Jason Bunyan, we presented that work at the Posters on the Hill, which is who sponsored that? Posters on the Hill. Yeah, the Council on Undergraduate Research sponsors that at the U.S. Capitol. And at the Capitol, we had a poster session, and we met important people, including one of the senators from New York. And I have a photo of that in my office as well. So anyway, Samantha's going to tell you more about her journey, but I will say that Samantha got her PhD from the oldest public university in the United States, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which happens to be my alma mater, and which is now the men's basketball team is in the Final Four of the NCAA tournament this year, having just defeated St. Peter's, the 15 seed team that had made it all the way to the Elite Eight. And on Saturday night, you can watch Chapel Hill defeat Duke in the NCAA tournament, which is always a treat. So I will leave it at that, and I will ask you to help me in giving a warm Geneseo welcome to Dr. Samantha Calkins.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samantha Calkins, as Dr. Fletcher had said, and I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm a federal program manager within the National Nuclear Security Administration's defense programs. How did I get here? Well, come along my journey that started right here at Geneseo. Here, just a quick outline. I will start with my career path, then give some more details on my current career and office. So I came to Geneseo under the guise of the 3-2 cooperative engineering program. After freshman year, I decided to switch to a double major in applied physics and mathematics. Around the same time, Dr. Fletcher picked me up as a research assistant under the recommendation from Dr. Pogozelsky, who witnessed my obsessiveness with taking copious amounts of notes. Renee Zicart would be proud. And I started on my first ever research project with 2 of my classmates. The project was to investigate charge injection devices, or CIDs, as detectors of charged particles with application of diagnosing experiments at the Omega laser at the Laboratory for Laser Energetics at the University of Rochester. Here on this slide, I have a schematic of the device as well as a graph of one of the tests we did, comparing the count rates for the CID with a silicon surface barrier detector, which at the time was the standard for detecting charged particles. In my junior year, I picked up an independent research study creating helium-3 implanted tantalum foils that I made with the department's duoplasmatron and would be used in fusion reaction experiments. Junior year was also the time when I started to really think about what I wanted to do with my life after graduation. Did I want to go find a job in industry? Did I want to become a professor or research scientist at a university? I wasn't really sure. All I knew was that I loved science. I loved research. I loved having a complex problem to try to figure out. So I talked with Dr. Fletcher about it, and he told me that I had great potential for being successful in graduate school. Those words stuck with me, and I decided to apply to a few schools and see what happens. And as Dr. Fletcher had already mentioned, I was accepted into physics graduate program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. At Chapel Hill, I was offered an opportunity to start early and do research during the summer before my graduate program began. Since I'd been doing summer research at Geneseo, it helped make it a natural transition. As an extra bonus, I got to know the nuclear physics group before jumping into all the rigors of first year life. So what did I do for 5 years of my life in research? Well, here's the basic premise. Let's say a bad person is trying to smuggle some special nuclear material into the US. So uranium or plutonium or some other actinide. If they're smart, they're not just going to waltz in with it on their person. They are going to hide it somewhere. Maybe in a shipping container. Those are full of all kinds of stuff. How are you, the good guy, going to find it before they can do something awful with the nuclear material? Well, fortunately, actinides have signatures that act like fingerprints when you hit them with high energy light or photons. Fancy term is nuclear resonance fluorescence. High energy photons are absorbed in the material and the gamma rays are emitted from the material with specific energies that are characteristic of it. That's the fingerprint. Using a monoenergetic photon beam, you can scan all the energies up to neutron separation energy, compiling all the resonances into a specific profile to identify the material. You can go beyond the neutron separation energy, but now you have a different profile based on a different reaction. So here I have a top view of my experimental setup and a couple of graphs that really culminate many, many experiments and a whole lot of data analysis. If you want to ask me about it after, please feel free to. I just want to save some time and keep on going. So my time at Chapel Hill was mostly focused on research, as usually is when you're a graduate student. But I did get to do a couple of opportunities to do different activities. I did 2 nuclear summer schools, one at Michigan State and one at UC Berkeley. These schools helped me connect with other graduate students in the field and learn more about specific topics, like the latest advances in radiation detection and measurement, which was really helpful in my own research. I also went to a few conferences to present my research. I even decided to do something completely unrelated to physics and did a semester course to become a certified EMT basic. Once I graduated from Chapel Hill, I wanted somehow to combine my deep desire for helping others with my love for science and research. This led me to become a postdoctoral fellow with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which is one of the agencies of the Department of Defense. DTRA's mission is to enable the DoD, US government, and international partners to counter and deter weapons of mass destruction, or WMD, and emerging threats, simply put as detect, deter, defeat. Here I was functionally like a program manager's apprentice and learned the ropes of managing a portfolio for grants to universities. The specific portfolio I supported was interested in sensing and recognizing WMD. Projects within it included creation of novel detection materials, methods for detecting nuclear materials at a distance, and advanced techniques for nuclear forensics, just to name a few. During my postdoc, I also became intrigued in database design while helping the office organize its collection of programmatic metrics. I helped develop a database for managing and reporting information we collected from various universities we funded. The fellow position I had at DTRA was only a temporary one, meaning that after 1 to 2 years, the expectation was the fellows would find a new job. I was really interested in civil service by this point and knew that it would satisfy my craving for helping others and doing meaningful work. So I searched and searched for a position with the government, but at the time there weren't very many openings. So instead, I joined a government contractor called Answer, who was running a federally funded research and development center, or FFRDC, for the Department of Homeland Security. This was my first foray into government research and studies, and I learned a lot. I was a part of a couple of analysis of alternative studies, which are a specific type of decision analysis used to explore options for buying really expensive things for the government. One AOA was for putting radiation detectors at ports. As I had described earlier, a bad person may try to smuggle something in a shipment container. Let's say we've got all those fingerprints of all the materials we would care about, both nuclear and maybe even shielding, because a lot of shielding material might signal the presence of something being shielded. Well, now we would need a system to scan containers looking for those signatures and to do it quickly without breaking the flow of commerce. A container stuck at a port would cost businesses lots of money if it's not moved quickly. What technologies could we use to do this? What situations would this work and not work in? These are the types of questions we would ask during the study. I also did other types of studies, one that was focused on modeling the flow of people coming across the southwest border illegally to try to accurately account for them all based on incomplete data set that the Border Patrol has. And incomplete because they know who they catch. They know those that are picked up by the ground sensors and leave evidence behind as people they haven't caught, but they don't know about those that don't leave evidence, and they can only assume that they aren't accounting for everyone. We actually used some meteorology models, which I find fascinating, that we can use models in other fields to get an accurate look at this unknown number for a more complete picture of what's happening at the border. I find that really cool. The government studies taught me that many times analysis just does not speak for itself. We had to spend a lot of time thinking about how to speak for and visualize the conclusions from our analysis so that they would resonate with our government sponsor. Having a result that matters and that people can understand is very important. Another thing that these studies taught me is that very complex problems need people from many different backgrounds working together to find a solution. Unfortunately, Answer lost the contract for the FFRDC, and I took that as a signal to try to find employment with the federal government again. This time I lucked out and became a federal employee with the Department of Energy, specifically in the Energy Information Administration, or EIA. This agency is focused on collecting, analyzing, and disseminating energy information from all energy sectors: coal, petroleum, natural gas, electric, renewable, and nuclear. I was in the oil and gas office and helped develop a new model for their international energy outlook that focused on the economics of hydrocarbon extraction, transformation, and movement. Or in other words, a model to understand the liquid fuel and natural gas markets on an international level. I was responsible for the logistics model portion, which worked to solve essentially a network transshipment problem by calculating optimal transportation, loading and unloading capacities, and optimizing flows of commodities given the calculated capacities. The model was designed specifically to keep the data separate from the optimization code to make it flexible for handling different topologies or regions or routes, different commodities and different transportation modes. I also handled creation of some of the data for the model and did a side project which had me trying to estimate global gas flare volumes from some NOAA data, and that was no easy feat. I really enjoyed programming in Python. Working on these models was a great challenge, but some part of me really missed nuclear science and research. One day, an opportunity came in the form of a job fair, and I was offered my current position as a physical scientist for defense programs within the National Nuclear Security Administration. What does physical scientist mean in the government? Well, honestly, this is just the description of the type of person they are looking for, someone who has a degree in physical science. Rather, my actual job function is a program manager, and I manage two programs. The first is called Advanced Diagnostics. It is a part of a bigger portfolio of programs titled Assessment Science, which is focused on the science to understand how nuclear weapons work. Advanced Diagnostics establishes novel tools and methodologies for how we measure certain observables we care about in nuclear weapons science, as well as how we deliver the energy to create the conditions we need. The second program is called ICF Diagnostics and Instrumentation. This one is the part of the Inertial Confinement Fusion Program, that's what the ICF stands for, and is focused on high energy density or HED science capabilities to generate fusion, burn, and gain in the laboratory, providing access to extreme conditions essential to assessing nuclear weapons. We have different methods to try to generate this fusion burn, which are embodied by our 3 national HED facilities, NIF, Z, and Omega. The source of power varies for each of the facilities. NIF and Omega use a lasers, while Z uses a Z pinch, a type of plasma confinement. The facilities use the intense burn of power to implode a target, compress the material and heat it to very high temperatures. If the temperature and pressure are high enough, then a fusion reaction should be ignited. ICF Diagnostics' contribution to this effort is to create new tools for diagnosing experiments at NIFZ and Omega, and better quality and quantity of data will help us understand these implosions better and maybe even reach ignition, which is when the fusion reaction becomes self-sustaining. Besides managing these 2 programs, I also help co-manage the entire ICF program with another manager. In addition to being a program manager, I am also a technical lead for our Stewardship Science Academic Alliance, which is our program for funding grants at universities. We have 5 main topic areas, and I'm the lead for low energy nuclear science and radiochemistry. Even though this is a smaller part of my current job, I enjoy supporting university research, and in some ways it feels as if I've come full circle. Maybe I will be able to support a student who is much like me when I started out. So, what does it mean to be a federal program manager? Well, when we bring fellows into our office, we usually start with the phrase, we are not the doers of science, we are the managers of science, to give them a sense of what we do. In very simple terms, we are bureaucrats. This starts with defining the scope that the program will execute on to accomplish the agency's mission and to make sure it is aligned with national and agency strategies. We do site visits to the national labs and wherever else our performers are working. And we also do regular assessments of their work to make sure that the performers are executing what they're supposed to. It includes thinking about what the future entails and how our programs could or will respond, and strategizing how our program fits with the agency's future goals. It's a lot of communication and coordination with people across the agency and the government that are concerned about the same topics we are. Budgets are our life. We help to put together the president's budget requests and advocate for our program's vitality. And as I mentioned before, another part of my career is the SSAA technical lead for our topical areas of low energy nuclear science and radiochemistry. Under the SSAA, we also support research areas of properties of materials under extreme conditions, hydrodynamics, and high energy density physics. Our goal is to fund good science and to sustain the academic community in these research areas. From the work aspect, this involves providing technical input to program planning and our funding opportunity announcements. It involves a lot of reviews, like site visits and panels, as well as reviewing annual reports and proposals. It can be a lot of paperwork type work, but it's worth it to make sure good science is funded and supported at universities. As I mentioned before, interacting with universities, both professors and students, is a rewarding part of the job. It's energizing to see students so excited to talk about their research that I'm able to fund them to do. I definitely feel grateful to be a part of it. So now we've come to my office. So I've talked somewhat generally and around my office in the prior slides, but let's dive into some of those details. Department of Energy, or DOE, is one of the 15 main executive departments of the federal government. DOE's main objective is to ensure America's security and prosperity by addressing its energy, environmental, and nuclear challenges through transformative science and technology solutions. The core of nuclear security work within the DOE is done by the National Nuclear Security Administration, or the NNSA. First and foremost, The NNSA maintains the safety, security, and effectiveness of our nation's nuclear weapons stockpile. Other very important parts of the NNSA mission are reducing the global danger from nuclear threats, such as weapons of mass destruction and other nuclear non-proliferation issues, responding to nuclear and radiological emergencies in the United States and abroad, providing safe and effective nuclear propulsion for the US Navy, strengthening our national security through science, technology, and engineering capabilities. And finally, modernizing our nuclear enterprise infrastructure, meaning the facilities and the laboratories dedicated to the nuclear security mission. Each of these are taken on by various offices within NNSA. Defense Programs is charged with ensuring the US has a safe, secure, and reliable nuclear weapons stockpile. We touch on these other priorities as well, either directly or in some support capacity. The history of the nuclear weapons and the Manhattan Project, which was the birth of the nuclear weapon, is really, really interesting, but it's long and complicated. And unfortunately, we don't really have much time to get into all the details here. At the end of the talk, I've provided some links to resources, and they're mostly YouTube videos and channels from the national labs that provide a lot of great information and historical films. This graphic down here, that gives a quick peek into this history, showing the rapid increase in the number of warheads in the stockpile during the Cold War, and then the decline as the Cold War ends and multiple treaties are agreed upon. And then we come to our present day. Although we have less nuclear weapons than we did back in the 1960s, they are still just as relevant in today's world. Part of that relevance is due to their existence alone. We have them and other nations have them. We have to make sure that ours work so that someone else doesn't think that they can use theirs without consequence. One of the best ways to understand how something works is to run an experiment in the field. Ideally in a similar environment in which they will be operated, observe what happens, change one thing, and run another experiment. Well, from 1945 to 1962, that's exactly what they did and what we did. Testing with nuclear weapons above ground to understand the physics governing the phenomena that they were observing, and engineering needed to give what was desired. So in this picture here, it's a picture of the Ivy Mike test from 1952, which took place in the Pacific Ocean. This was the first full-scale test of a thermonuclear device, which means that part of the explosive yield comes from nuclear fusion. This was a proof of concept experiment, which means it was not intended as a deliverable weapon. The scale of the yield was on the order of megatons. So just to give you some idea of these, let me show you a quick video of some of them. So here you will see a variety of atmospheric tests that occurred at the test site in Nevada or took place in the Pacific. These tests were mostly tower type tests, meaning they put the device on top of a tower. That Mike one, that one was the 10 megaton one that I just spoke of, that I showed the picture of. Bravo was our biggest test that we did, around 15 megatons. And it was also a thermonuclear device. And then the rest of these ones, you'll see that the explosions have they have commonalities as well as some differences, just due to where they were taking place, the different material, what they were trying to study, etc. Many of these were actually low yield devices besides the 2 megaton ones that I pointed out. And that's it for that one. All right. Let's see, back to my presentation. All right, in 1962, we ended above ground testing and moved to the testing underground due to environmental impact that they were having. But we still needed to do more experiments and collect more data because we needed to be able to validate our weapon designs. So here is an aerial photograph of the craters produced by underground testing of nuclear weapons at the test site at Nevada. And this is a south-facing view in the Yucca Flat with Asian Lake up here in that white. The craters are subsistence craters that form after nuclear weapons are detonated underground. The Nevada National Security Site was used from 1951 to 1992 to conduct a total of 100 atmospheric and 828 underground nuclear weapons tests. So, showed you some atmospheric ones. I can show you an underground test. So you will see the ground start to cave in after some time has passed from the explosion occurring. This is the subsistence crater. So what happens is the explosion goes off, liquefying the surrounding rock. And when the rock cools, it settles to the bottom of the cavity. Eventually, the roof of the blast cavity collapses into the void. This creates a new roof, which may also collapse into the larger, but partially rubble-filled cavity. A chain reaction of successive roof collapses form a chimney that work its way to the surface. The size of the subsistence crater depends on the yield of the device, the depth of displacement, and the geological characteristics of the surrounding soil. All right. And that was a low yield test. So, 1992, a moratorium was declared on nuclear testing program. This isn't the end to the nuclear weapons program, just the underground testing portion. And as the graphic shows here, we still have quite a large stockpile of these weapons that we are required to maintain. How do we ensure our allies and adversaries that they won't fail if they are needed? This is the mission of science-based stockpile stewardship. So this final picture I have here is a shot of the NIF target chamber. NIF's lasers compress the fuel fusion to pressures that exceed 100 billion times Earth's atmosphere and temperatures of more than 100 million Kelvin, forcing hydrogen atoms to fuse in controlled thermonuclear reaction. NIF is one of the multiple facilities we operate to run experiments as a part of stockpile stewardship. So let's explore this idea of stockpile stewardship a bit more with an analogy. Imagine you have a car sitting in your garage for 30 years without ever turning it on. How will you know with 100% certainty that the engine will start when you need it to? How will you know it will get you to where you need it to go? Without turning on the car, what could you do to figure this out? You could check the voltage on the battery, and to do that, you would need some sort of diagnostic tool, maybe a multimeter of some sort. If the engine does start, theoretically, will the tires fail to get you to the destination? You could test the material properties of them to find out. Maybe you hook up an external battery to test other subsystems of the car. You could check to see if the tires move when the wheel is turned. Maybe you could take the car to a wind tunnel for some aerodynamic testing to determine how it would move under certain conditions. Maybe you could build a miniature replica of your car and run some tests. And I could go on and on. I hope you see where I'm going with this. This is essentially stockpile stewardship. We can no longer test our nuclear weapons, so we need to run other experiments, from microscale physics experiments to big hydrodynamic ones, to understand something about the physical phenomena, materials, and engineering, so that we can guarantee that the nuclear weapon will work when we need it to. We need people, knowledge, and experimental capabilities like facilities and diagnostics. We need to be creative and use science, technology, and innovation. We need really, really fast supercomputers. Within defense programs, the Office of Experimental Sciences, or OES, is the office I work in, is the cornerstone of stockpile stewardship. These blue boxes here represent activities OES supports for robust stockpile stewardship grounded in science. So let's step through them. Enable stockpile applications. This is basically support to the other side of the defense program's family. So OES resides within the research and development space of defense programs, but there are other arms, and there's one for production modernization. So that's producing materials, and stockpile management. And so that's management of our current nuclear weapon stockpile. And both of those could benefit from scientific ingenuity by providing new options or help resolve issues that they're facing. So if we go back to the car analogy, we used to build cars for max speed, but this is probably different than how you would build them if you wanted the cars to stay operational for 50 years. You would probably want to know how the materials, like rubber, change with age. Also, you'd probably want to know how many cars you needed to disassemble to look for issues. Quantified weapons phenomena. This really means we experiment, we look to understand the physics, chemistry, material science, and other science areas that underlie our nuclear weapons. Provide scientific deterrence. Deterrence is such a lofty term, and we'll take it here to mean our scientific expertise and competence discourages others from any consequential actions by instilling doubt in their own abilities and competence on the subject. This is demonstrated by building advanced technologies and capabilities at our national labs, conducting challenging experiments under extreme pressures and temperatures and densities, running high fidelity modeling and simulations, peer review, supporting the new workforce. Lots of things fall under scientific deterrence. Build and maintain experimental tools. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Tools could be facilities, targets, optics, diagnostics, drivers, accelerators. Many things fall under tools. And then finally, ensure stewardship sustainability. People, this is people. Making sure we have a strong pipeline of scientists and engineers that want to work on challenging and complex problems. So for weapons science experiments, and honestly for many different types of experiments, you really need three basic things. First, you need relevant conditions, which means you need some sort of driver capable of delivering the energy you need to reach appropriately dynamic physical environments. Here I have a chart showing an example of some of those facilities we operate to run experiments at extreme pressures using various drivers to get there. Lasers, pulse power, explosives. These are just a few of the ways. Second, you need technologies and characterization techniques that will enable measurements of what you want to measure, a material response or a fuel shape of an implosion, for example. We call these diagnostics, and these could be detectors, imagers, spectrometers, advanced sources, advanced analytic methods using machine learning. The list could go on and on. So here on the right side, I have some examples of data from diagnostics using X-ray and neutron imaging, shadowgraphy, and spectroscopy, as well as some pictures of diagnosticians and their elements at NIF. And on the top one, we have a close-up of a photon Doppler velocimetry diagnostic. It just is a really cool picture. And finally, third, we need simulations that we can compare to experiments, both historical ones from the nuclear testing days and modern ones we are doing now. All this data is used to refine the models and codes into better predictors of reality. Before I wrap up, I wanted to provide you with two examples of the kinds of research we manage or we support others to do in OES. The first is plutonium science, which is crucial for understanding and planning for the future of our nuclear weapons, since its purity and phase state may affect its performance. Here I have listed some of the quirkiness of plutonium to give you a feel for the challenges someone might face while researching it. Plutonium has the most phase options of any known material. It changes phase with small variations in temperature and pressure. It generates heat and impurities as it breaks down, so performance might change aging. And here, because I love a good video, is a video of one of the facilities where scientists might run some plutonium science experiments. Hopefully you can hear this.
Commonly known as JASPER, the Joint Actinide Shock Physics Experimental Research Facility is a two-stage light gas gun used to study the behavior of plutonium and other materials under high pressures, temperatures, and strain rates. Understanding the behavior of these materials at high pressures is essential for predicting the performance of the nation's aging nuclear weapons. Jasper is capable of accelerating projectiles to a very high speed, 28,000 feet per second, so that upon impact with a small sample of plutonium, the effects of strong shock waves on actual nuclear material can be studied. This enables precise equation of state measurements that calibrate nuclear weapons design and analysis codes.
Correct. Another area that I've already mentioned a few times is high energy density science, which is important for answering many nuclear weapons science questions. These HDD experiments study material response in extreme conditions, dynamics of materials, radiation transport and hydrodynamics, opacity and atomic physics, burn physics, and nuclear physics. In this graphic right here down at the bottom, it's showing a strength experiment, and you can see the force applied over here on the material and how it deforms under stress as you progress in time. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the recent results on the NIF, where we got super close to achieving ignition. This success was built upon many years of research in the ICF program and investment by defense programs. The August 2021 shot achieved a fusion yield about 8 times higher than NIF's previous record from February 2021. It was a good year for NIF. The energy generated was about 5 times the energy absorbed by the fuel capsule and about 70% of the laser energy delivered to the target. And this 70% is why it's only near ignition and not ignition. And I've got one more final video just to leave some inspirational words from the ignition shot.
Challenge of stockpile stewardship, which is our program to support nuclear weapons stockpile in the absence of nuclear testing. How can we achieve an enormously broad array from ambient conditions that we're experiencing right now to temperature pressures that we only see in the center of the sun? How can we do that at a laboratory scale? This latest result will allow us to cover an even broader array of relevant experiments for the key modernization programs that we have, as well as allowing us much higher fidelity tests for what we expect to be much more challenging conditions that nuclear weapons need to survive.
The whole point of having places like this lab is to do things that are incredibly difficult. And, you know, if it weren't impossible, we'd need Livermore. We're here to take on the biggest, most gnarly technical challenges that our country and the world face. And bring forward solutions.
And now through the work of a lot of people, not just at Livermore, but many partners that put intellectual capital into this project, you know, we've been able to finally reach this threshold of ignition. And you know, now we're tantalizingly close to kind of pushing over the threshold and getting back, you know, the energy we put into lasers. So it's a pretty exciting time.
All right. There's more of that video. I leave it to you guys to watch the rest of that if you want. So finally, some final thoughts. First, take all the opportunities that you can when they come. One reason is they might not come around again. I found that the conditions are never completely perfect for any opportunity, but you really just have to do them anyway, especially if thinking about them leaves you feeling excited. You just have to do it and not think about it. My journey has been all over the place, if you could tell from the beginning of my talk. And I'm a better program manager and person for all those experiences and opportunities. There are many ways to be scientific. You don't have to be doing science in a lab at a university to be a scientist. Being scientific can look different for everyone. The core commonality is applying those critical thinking and problem-solving skills in a meaningful way, whether that's in academia, industry, or the government. That said, the skills you will learn from studying physics and math are foundational. I forgot who once told me this. My guess it was my graduate advisor. But physicists can really do anything. We have valuable skills that can be applied to many different and complex problems. We are depth learners and approach problems from multiple sides. It's a valuable skill to have. One recommendation I have is to learn how to program in any computer language. I'm a little biased. I love Python, but you can do any computer language at all because it helps build a frame of mind that breaks problems down logically and clearly articulates solutions. Good communication is key no matter what job you have. Being able to connect with other people through a story or visualization or something else is more powerful than you might think. Remember, data and analysis can't speak for themselves. We have to speak for them in a way that will get people to listen. And finally, consider civil service when you're thinking about what kind of career you would like after graduation. You can find real, meaningful work to do that's both exciting and rewarding. I know I have. So thank you for listening to my story, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Do we have any questions? I'll start with Dr. Padalino.
Hey Samantha, how are you?
Good.
Great. When's the next time you're going to be coming to the laser lab? We should get together.
What was that?
When is the next time you're coming to the laser lab in Rochester? We should get together.
I know, I've been meaning to come down. I wanted to come down before Mike Campbell retired, but it just couldn't happen with the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the next time you're there, give us a ring. We'll come up.
I will.
Okay. Great.
Definitely. I actually grew up right next to the lab, right off of Monroe Ave there. Not Monroe, Mount Hope Ave, I mean.
Hope.
Really?
Yeah.
So let me follow that up. So I assume you have to make site visits and things like that. So part of your job involves travel. Can you tell us, like in a pre-pandemic time, what kind of, in a year, what kinds of travel would you maybe do?
That's a great question. Well, it depends on the person. So if you love traveling, like some people do in our office, you could be traveling, I don't even know, up to 50% time in a year. Some people are gone before pandemic times. They were gone maybe 2 weeks out of them every month. And that means that they would be going to our national labs. So Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos, Sandia National Lab. They would go out to LLE as well. But then we have other labs, smaller labs around the East and West Coast that we would travel to. We traveled to the Nevada test site, now known as National Nuclear Security Site. Me personally, I like to travel a little bit, but I have a small child and it's a little more complicated. My husband's also a program manager for the Department of Defense. And so we've got a lot of deconflicting schedules and travel and stuff like that. But we also go, besides going out to sites, we go to conferences. We go to working group. So there'll be interagency working groups that might be in a different location than DC. Yeah, we do a lot of travel.
And I'll follow up before Dr. McLean had a question, but I'm using my prerogative here. So if you were to estimate sort of like the dollar amount of the portfolio that you manage right now, could you, do you have an estimate of that?
Yeah, so I can tell you that. So I would say on average, the advanced diagnostics portfolio is about $30 to $35 million a year. ICF diagnostics is on order of 70 million. And the whole ICF program, which I helped co-manage, the budget was just enacted at $580 million.
So Geneseo students could, if they follow a career path like you, be managing a substantial fraction of $1 billion worth of scientific infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if some of that could come to Geneseo. No, no, my real question is, so some of your career path was a fairly big jump, but I noticed that your postdoc, it seemed like it was pretty well aligned with your grad student work. Were there connections that you made during grad school? How did you find that postdoc position?
Yeah, so luck. So my advisor, actually, he was fairly hooked into a lot of the different opportunities that happen around DC, and that were not sort of like the traditional stuff that you might do as a postdoc. And so he actually sent me that opportunity. But there are a lot of different fellowships and graduate student internships and different things that you can take a part of in DC. I didn't realize it until I came here, but there are a lot. And they're all on the web to find. So I would put Washington DC fellowship science or something in Google, and you'll find lots of these opportunities.
Cool. Any other questions? Oh, another question.
I get something along a similar line. You know, some Geneseo graduates feel like they would like to try going into the workforce or do something other than grad school. I wonder, do you know if there are civil service opportunities for bachelor's graduates? And
Yeah, there are. You don't have to do a PhD to be in this field. There are a lot of bachelor's, master's, PhD level positions across specifically in the nuclear security enterprise that I work in. There are everywhere. They need people, and they need people at all different levels. And so, yes, I would say yes, there's lots of opportunities for every single education level within this. And civil service specifically, I mean, a lot, like I talked about in my journey, it was sort of like, well, what's on USA Jobs this time? So you kind of like, you have to feel it out a bit, because different agencies will post different times, and the one big thing with government is that it takes a lot of time to get HR actions through. So they are very randomly popping up on USA Jobs, which is where these jobs are posted. But those opportunities do exist.
Okay. Samantha, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say another thing too, which I found out. I didn't talk about this much, but when I went to answer, I didn't directly go into their FFRDC. They actually had an analyst development program that I was able to go in, and so that could be another avenue where you could be a bachelor's or master's and go into these development programs and learn a ton of skills that are needed for government studies that you can't learn really anywhere else. And a lot of these government contractors have these programs to build that workforce up.
Ooh, I just thought of one more thing. Completely random, and this is a shot in the dark. You said you went to a summer school in Michigan?
Yes.
Right? Did you happen to cross paths with Chris Wall?
Yes.
Class of 2004. Because he was doing similar work, right?
The name sounds familiar. Chris Wall, I don't know if I crossed paths with him at Michigan State. But I think I crossed paths with him again at some point. Maybe it was at a conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It all blurs together after a while.
Yeah. Samantha, we're really, really grateful that you took time out this afternoon to share your story and to talk to folks about one of the careers that's possible with a physics major. And and for me personally, it was great to see you and to catch up a little bit, and we'll have to be more intentional about that in the future. But please join me in thanking Samantha.
And I sent out these slides. They are publicly releasable. So if there are some links in here that if anyone wants to look up anything or click back on those awesome videos I showed, they're all like hidden links on the slides. And if
Great.
anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out.
Okay, we have Samantha's email address.
Yes, and also she sent me her slides, so if anybody wanted to be getting that.